Uh, Please excuse me while I finish my drink. Ah, there's a frog in the bottom of my mug. Recently acquired this frog mug, and it reminded me that I had never made a video about ceramic frogs. So I will start by talking about this one and about frog mugs. I originally thought that this one was a Dutch Delft mug, but on further investigation, I found that it was actually English Delft about 1820. It has a relief moulded decoration, and there are people seemingly enjoying the wine, and the frog sits comfortably on the bottom, waiting to scare you. A frog mug is often called a toad mug or a surprise mug. It is a ceramic cup mainly used for drinking beer or similar alcoholic beverages. They were first produced in Sunderland before being copied in places like Staffordshire, Worcestershire, and Newcastle. These practical joke mugs containing frogs or toads date from about 1775 and continued to be popular until the end of the 19th century. An unsuspecting drinker would be surprised as he downed his beer to see a frog or toad emerging from the cloudy liquid in the bottom of the cup. Sometimes the mugs were smashed by the surprise victim, and as a precaution, an inscription on the mug, such as this one, though malt and venom seem united, don't break my pot nor be affrighted. The mugs were a sort of rustic joke that added to the atmosphere and jollity in taverns in England in the late 18th and 19th century. Making frogs of various shapes, sizes, and colours in clay is, for various reasons, an activity by potters which goes back in time for many centuries. In pre Christian times, mythology was the main motivation. Myths are stories that are not really true, but still believed by many people, attempting to explain the unexplainable. In pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, which is the area from Mexico down more or less to the southern tip of North America, many tribes worshipped a goddess known as Senetil, the patron of childbirth and fertility, who took the form of a frog or a toad with many others. Also, frogs and toads were considered spirits of rain and were used in many rituals intended to bring on the rain. The early Aztecs saw the frog as Tachaculti, if that's the way you pronounce it, the Earth Mother Goddess who embodied the endless cycle of death and rebirth. The Moche civilization of northern Peru lasted from 100 to 800 CE and is renowned for the making of artifacts such as these vessels shown here. Frogs occur frequently in the iconography of Moche art as water and land animals that mutate from eggs to tadpoles to frogs. They were associated with ideas of transformation and growth. The association with water more specifically with the coming of rain, connected the animal also with vegetation and fertility. The Greeks and Romans also associated frogs with fertility and harmony. In ancient Egyptian religion and mythology, Heket was a frog-headed goddess who personified generation, birth, and fertility. Heket was sometimes depicted with the body of a frog, and frog amulets were common in ancient Egypt as charms of fertility. In ancient times in India, frogs were likely associated with beauty, aspiration, and wisdom. And here we see a very interesting clay Mississippian frog jar from Arkansas, 12 to 1400 AD. Now let's move on a few centuries to a fellow called Bernard Palissy in the mid-1500s who was renowned for adding creatures to his ceramic plates. But here are a couple of plates not by him but influenced by his unique style. This is a plate with a frog in the Palissy style by a French pottery in the mid-1500s. And this one is by a Portuguese Majolica potter, a Cunha. And here are two more plates with frogs in the Palissy style by Portuguese potter F. Gomes da Vela, and it's dated about 1850. I'm sure you are all familiar with the Chinese feng shui frog, who will bring you lots of money if you place a coin in its mouth. This is just one of the myths that abound in Chinese folklore and custom, where frogs and toads symbolize fertility, regeneration, yin, and immortality. The people who lived in the Han River region of Hubei in China lived in fear of the almighty frog god, who possessed divine powers and who is worshipped at a frog-filled temple especially dedicated to him. And the story is similar in Japan, where the frog is symbolic of fertility and good fortune. And there is also a temple devoted to the frog called the Nyorinji Frog Temple in Ogori in Japan. And here are some appropriate images. 50. We'll come closer to the modern era by having a look at some of the works by 19th century Majolica potters. They made a lot of frog-inspired pieces in great abundance of variety in form, shape, colour and ideas. Here are some excellent examples from the English and continental potteries. And in this case, there is a multitude of images, but I'll choose a few interesting ones to show here. Starting off with Minton, a frog on a lily pad and a frog riding a fish. Most of these are dated in the second half of the 19th century. Two more Mintons, a sweetmeat compote and a frog creamer. On the left is a Minton Majolica salt, and on the right, a frog vase by the Copeland factory. Here we see a George Jones frog vase and a French Majolica frog pitcher or jug. The French Majolica potter Delphine Massier, in the latter part of the 19th century, must have loved frogs because he made an awful lot of them, like this delightful tureen and frog umbrella stand and this very whimsical froggy vase. And here are just a few more Mathieu frogs. Now here's a somewhat interesting story. The Green Frog service is a large dinner and dessert service made by the English pottery company Wedgwood for the Empress Catherine the Great of Russia, and completed in 1774. 944 pieces were ordered, 680 for the dinner service and 264 for the dessert service. At Catherine's request, the hand-painted decoration showed British scenes copied from prints, with a total of over 1,200 views. In addition, each piece had a green frog within a shield, and this was a reference to the Chesney Palace, which the service was intended for, which Catherine called La Grenouillère, which is a French word dating from the 16th century for a marsh or swamp populated by frogs. Over the years, the service has been split up and widely dispersed, but remnants can still be seen at the Hermitage Museum and the English Palace at Peterhof and many other museums. And here are mugs which Wedgwood put out as a 250th anniversary of the remarkable Green Frog service. And while we are still in the 19th century, here is a delightful frog inkwell by the Anna Pottery in the US in 1884, and a Dalton Lambeth Ware frog bicyclist. And the frogs seemed to have been in very good shape for a pitcher, creamer or jug. And here is another delightful bunch of 19th century frogs being very musical. And now I think it's time to move into the modern era and take a look at a multitude of frog images. And I don't think there's any need for me to comment. Just wonder and enjoy. And one thing that I should mention here is that the Victorian Majolica frog pottery has been heavily reproduced by many potteries in Europe and in Asia because of the popularity of these designs and ideas. Here are just a few examples of this. Frogs have been the subject of a lot of fairy tales as well. For example, everyone knows the story by the Grimm brothers about the Frog Prince. Well, he was a very popular subject for many clever potters. Take a look at these examples. Delightful, aren't they? Now, it just so happens that during my career as a professional potter, I did make frogs as well. And I chose the Frog Prince as one of the subjects of several of the fountains that I made during that time. And ceramic fountains will be the subject of my next video. And thank you for watching.